Everybody, and welcome to ESO Daily. I am your host, Mr. Craven. All right, guys. So today I'm running a little behind. Forgive me. I didn't even get a chance to really set up a lot of things, but today I want to discuss acceptable losses. Now, I've been covering diminishing returns. Hey, Caleb. Morning. I've been covering diminishing returns way prior to Morrowind, when everybody, Morning Mustang, when everybody was stacking CP. So me and Zai were like the only YouTubers covering diminishing returns, right? And it's kind of important because now we can take a look and we reflect on that. And Morning Robert, we reflect on it and everybody kind of accepts that. Well, you have to. Morning Carl, you have to because it's mathematical law. You can't ignore it, right? The law of diminishing returns applies to percentage math. Morning, Wiggly. So if you try to ignore the law of diminishing returns, well, you end up losing down the line. But then we have the retrospect aspect in economics, because diminishing returns usually applies to economics math, right? So I studied economics and financing in college. Now, keep in mind, I'm a college dropout. But I did work in like the financing field. So diminishing returns was something I was very familiar with, but I also had to know about what we had called acceptable loss. Because when you deal with diminishing value, you have to keep in mind comes a point where you're looking at indifferent value, Morning Cheese, and you're looking at acceptable loss. Now, the thing about it is the indifferent values have to deal with variables that can be controlled within the diminishing margins, right? That you become indifferent because you yield as much as your loss is accepted. So if I lose in one aspect, I'm going to gain the equal amount of loss in the retrospect, which makes me what? Indifferent. And that's why I'm always telling people that's why you cannot say BIS in this game, because the math applies, right? We can't ignore it. You cannot go ahead and say, oh, well, red guard's always going to be the better option for stamina DPS. Well, no, because now we have an indifferent curve or an indifferent variable that would apply to the Khajiit, because why? They get a passive towards their crit. We don't want to go ahead and execute more crit, so the red guard needs more crit. Good morning, Scott. So the red guard needs more crit. So based on those two parameters alone, we would go ahead and say, well, based on those two, I'd have to bring up the red guard's critical value. Well, how would I do that? Well, there's multiple ways in this game to achieve that. But regardless, you still have an indifferent value when it comes to overall performance. So that's what I'm always telling people. You can't literally say one is better than the other when the math would contradict you in every way possible because of the way the devs designed it. In economics, economic math becomes, applied principle math in this game based on those laws. So in today's video, we're going to discuss acceptable loss. Now, acceptable loss is when we know a diminishing value is going to occur, right? We cannot control the loss of diminishing value because we're running in percentage-based math. So we know the more we put into one thing, the more effective diminishing loss is going to occur. So I'm going to get into the champion points, and we're going to go ahead and demonstrate this and kind of walk through it. All right, so I'm into the CP points. Now, I'm a mage character. Now, the first thing to keep in mind when you're allocating CP points is what you need and what you don't need. That's, once again, Economics 101. What are you needing to make your product, and what do you already have? So you already have said, materials, but you still need other materials, right, to make your product. So for Magicka users, we can see that in the light armor passive. So let me go ahead and get into this. So when we go into the light armor passive, this is kind of where we derive what we need from our template when we're making our builds. Because we're already getting a recovery, we're already getting a reduction, we're already getting increased resistance. But here's the big thing, we get spell critical. So that doesn't have anything to do with the CP system, but this one does, and that's concentration. See, stamina users, oh my God, Sylvia, thank you. Morning, Sylvia. Hello, freaks and geeks. Morning, all. Morning, Papa. Thank you. Thank you. So we already have a penetrating value. Thank you, Sylvia. Thank you. We already have a penetrating value that is already a set factor, right? So we can take that into the equation of the deduction of 18.2 or 18,200. All right, so, but stamina users do not get that, okay? So when we take a look at the medium armor passives, they get athletic, or agility. And that is their value. That's set when they hit 5 or more. Now, that doesn't go up any higher. It's a set value. But guess what they lack? They lack penetration. So their CP allocation is going to differ based on stamina or magicka. So they're going to need penetration where we're going to be like, oh, well, we have some penetration, so we don't need as much. And we got to take into effect other things like deductions from target, like Pierce Armor, sets that will deduct like Night Mothers, though it won't affect spellcasters, so on and so forth, and Mundus and Sharpen traits. All of these are factors. But when we take a look into the champion points, what we have available is how we offset the difference within the CP system, right? So let's say, you know, I have the 4,884, right? First thing I'm always going to do is I want to cover this. Elemental Expert is where we derive base damage, right? It goes across the board between direct and dot application, right? So in an ideal world, a lot of people would say, you know, split the values. You know, minimize the loss. That's a great idea, right? Nothing wrong with that. We can go ahead and the more we pump into it, the more points it takes to, you know, get up to a higher value. But keep in mind, we already have our penetration, so we don't need a lot of penetration because we're a light armor wearer, right? So let's say we just take it up to about 25, right? We want to go ahead and we want to try to keep this about marginal as possible. Mystic, not more math. I get it. You like to torture people with math. I'm trying to keep it simplistic. At least I don't have spreadsheets and everything else out. I mean, it could be worse, Thor, but welcome to the show. Morning. So, Elfborn. Now, this is a major thing. If we're going to take the Shadow Mundus, right, we get a value of 1208. Now, let me go ahead and I'll confirm this real quick. And let me get out the Shadow Mundus, right? All right, I'm going to get 2 Munduses out. I'll help with anything you need. Oh, won the Xbox gamer tag. Ace of Death. Yeah, definitely, dude. Throw me an invite. By the way, thank you, Xbox players. You guys have been so great. I'm just getting emails, invites. It's been great. I really like it. Thank you, guys. I really appreciate that. It's been a blessing. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to go into Browse. We're going to go into Services. And we're going to go down. We're going to grab 2 Munduses. Now, first thing I'm going to go ahead and grab is the Shadow. Okay. Oh, wrong button. Told me to buy crowns. I don't want to buy crowns. Shit. I might not be able to do that. Anyways. Dang it! That sucks. I thought I had enough in my little thing here. They gave us limited crowns this time. Hey, it's Slade, morning. Morning, Oren, but math makes everything so round like pie. I like it. Hell, if you need anything. Oh, thank you, Storm. So, I can't get it. So, whatever. Okay, but the whole idea is the Shadow Mundus is 12%, right? So, we always take that into consideration if we're not going to use the Shadow Mundus, right? So, we're getting a 12% towards critical damage. Now, if we don't have the Shadow Mundus because we're using another Mundus, then we can go ahead and take the missing value, right? Or the indifferent value, because I would be indifferent because if I already have 1208 into Elfborn, that's the equivalent value of the Shadow Mundus, right? So it goes by the rounded whole. So I can't get exactly 12%, but I'm getting 1208 for 28 points of the cost. So this actually becomes an indifference for me because I already have the value of the Shadow within my CP system, right? So it's there. Okay, those points are already allotted. So it's a set and forget at this point. Now, if I was to take the Shadow Mundus, I could adjust this value and decide if I want to do more critical damage. Go yellow on Xbox One. I am yellow. I am AD, Scott. Oh, I am AD on this platform. I'm on PC right now, but yeah, I'm AD on Xbox. Okay, so bless we're not going to worry about because we're a damage dealer. All right, but here becomes the question. Now we have this, and now we're going to take a look, and we're going to deal with what? Staff damage, right? And a lot of people would say, oh, you know, you should go ahead and probably take that up to about, you know, 12% as well. Okay, and then we can go ahead and determine, okay, well, now we have this, so we can put like, you know, another, what, 12% over here. And then I could come over here to thaumaters because I have dots, right? So I can go ahead and put another couple points in here, up to about 12% and whatever. So here we have a pretty good base. I could even take this up to about 12% for explanationary purposes. Okay, so let's say my values are exactly even at the 1208 percentage or the 12% percentage, right? But here's the funny thing when we take a look at diminishing value. Based on the cap of percentage, or the higher the cap will go, is the less amount of diminishing value we have at lower percentage value. So, for example, Thaumaturge is costing me 28 points at 1208, right? So now we come over, and it's the same thing at Master at Arms. So we can derive that these both have the same cap, right? But here's the deal. Elemental Expert doesn't. So for 1208, I'm actually having to spend more to achieve that base value. But this base value covers both distance, both direct and dot damage. So at this point, right, to achieve 1208, we've hit the acceptable loss. So we already know that Elemental Expert covers direct and dot. But to get to the desired 1208 or even across the board in percentage math, we did what? We allocated more points into it, wanting that desired effect, and that is an acceptable loss. But if we take it down to 28 points, like everything else is allocated, as you can see, our value will thus diminish further from the desired effect. So we are diminishing our value to maintain. But now we're only getting 7%, you see? So if I take it down 1 point and I go to the whole, now I'm only at 7%. Hey, Rock, morning. Are you going to create a guild for Xbox? I don't know yet. That becomes a good question. That becomes a really... So as you guys can see here, I'm not going to mess around with the values that's already been allocated. What I have to decide is how this is going to affect my build parameters, and how far I want to take it. Right? So let's go ahead and let's just, for example, confirm this, knowing we already have 83 points or 82 available to us, right? So when we go into our skills here, we see that our direct damage is dealing 5,828, right? But then we see our delimitate, which is our dot damage, dealing 11,030. Now, this is an overtime effect, so we can go ahead and deduct the value over time. So let me open up my calculator here. Okay. I always like to... And then we're going to divide that by 8. So we're dealing, oh, I put a dot. Oh, my God. I was wondering. I'm like, no, that's not right. So we're dealing 1,378 damage, rounded out to 1,379 every second for 8 seconds. Morning, Trinity. Hey, Trinity, thank you, by the way, on the Xbox. I appreciate it. And Mustang, you guys have been great. There's been a bunch of players. I want to thank everybody. Oh my gosh, really great, awesome stuff. So as you guys could see, the damage dealt is different. Now we're going to go back into the CP system, right? And like I said, we take a look at the Elemental Expert. Now we want an acceptable loss. Morning, Lewis. We're going to take this up to that 1208, right? Knowing that we're going to spend more points than any other skill line. Now, like I said, I'm trying to keep this basic and simple. I'm not going to get overwhelming. I could, but I'm not going to. I'm just kind of, just keeping it simple. The simpler it is, the better it works. So now we go back into these effects. Now look, we've scaled it higher. So we went from 5, 8 to 6. And now look at this. Now we went from 11.3 to 11.4. So we see the value increase from Elemental Expert, right? Now it becomes a question when we come back into it, when we know, oh my God, if I spend more points into this, I'm going to get more diminishing value. So is that an acceptable loss? Well, not necessarily, because there's passives within the CP system that might go ahead and help us further. One of these passives is the Butcher. So the Butcher becomes very useful in both applications in Stam and Magicka damage, because when we deal light and heavy attacks throughout our rotation and they're under that 25% mark, we get that 5% boost. So that's really nice, especially during execution phase. So we're hitting those executions, we're hitting up light and heavy, so we want to go ahead and aim this higher. Now, do we want to go ahead and use the Staff Expert to go ahead and increase our weaving capability, our light and heavy attacks, which is usually what a lot of people do? Or, here we go. Now see, we have a 28 point and we have a 19 point. Now I already know if I put more into Master at Arms, I'm going to suffer what? A diminishing return. It's going to be a diminishing, but is it an acceptable loss? It's going to be based on your preference. That's what I'm saying. We're having a play preference and build. And when people say, when the devs say it diversifies the CP system, it really does. Because am I going to weave as frequently throughout my rotation as I'm going to use abilities? If I'm weaving every other instead of, or every 2 versus every other, then I'm weaving less. This becomes less appealing for me to get desired effect. So I would take maybe the acceptable loss up to about 16% or 18 or whatever. Now we go ahead and we see I'm at 18.24, right? But with 48 points allocated. Now let's go ahead and say I went ahead and put another equal value to this, but look what happened. We got a higher percentage. Why? Because the ceiling cap is higher, right? So the higher the ceiling cap the less we suffer diminishing return. But our acceptable loss would go ahead and dictate to us, oh my God, I'm using more abilities and I need more from my abilities, so it becomes acceptable. That's an acceptable loss. You already know I'm weaving less, I want more from my abilities. So that's why you would do that. So I'm going to round this out to about 26. Now that leaves me 2 points. Now that doesn't do anything for percentage or rounded variables. So that allows me to go ahead and offset the 2 points into my erosion for desired effect. But now we have like what I would like to say ideal type applied CP allegation towards my damage modifiers, right? I'm getting a nice 26% towards light and heavy attack with destruction staff. I'm getting that nice passive for the Butcher towards execution phase. I've already taken an acceptable loss with 2 points. Or, now this is what's even crazy, if I want to bring this down, right, this is another value of acceptable loss. And let's say I bring this down to 18. Now I can get about another 2% out of this, or even 3. Maybe close. Oh, there it is. There it is. So now I got 3%, right? So I went from 18 to 22. So that's 4. So I went 4% higher at an acceptable loss of what? Diminishing value. And you have to pay attention to that, because it's the principle of economic math, right? And it's just and it translates over here because we're dealing with what? Percentages. And that's how it works. So if I want to bring this back down, I can get more out of my weaving attack, but my damage is going to suffer. My direct damage will suffer for that. So when I come back into this, now my funnel health is dealing a considerable amount more of damage. So it becomes kind of like you have to pick and choose how you play. Your play style determines your allegation, right? It really does. It's just that simple. So if I want to go ahead and I want to get this back down to 18%, or let's say even 19. Let's say I want to chew up a little bit of an acceptable loss. and I want to get this up. I can get that up to about what, 25%? Bingo, 25%. So I'm covering the distance and I'm marginalizing the loss, right? It's still a diminishing value is still occurring. So diminishing loss still occurs, but we have indifference, right? The indifference is covered between our builds. What because I become indifferent. And now we were looking at that and we're like, oh, okay, great, excellent. So sorry, I'm kind of winging this. So I'm like, this isn't speeched out, isn't written out. And that's kind of where we're at with all of these values. Now, when we take a look at also defensive aspects, each class is going to be different depending on their builds. So resistance, for example, becomes very, very, very important, right? How we're going to apply resistance values within the CP. And once again, we have to take a look at that through diminishing loss. If I'm a vampire, I'm going to need more what? Fire resistance. But if I'm not a vampire, I can go ahead and cover the values as equally as possible. So let's say we go 9%. We know the ceiling cap is 15% on here, right? That's a true value. So we'll scale it up all the way to max. Okay, there's a true value at 100%. Now, acceptable loss would, even in diminishing value, acceptable loss would be anything to gain without loss. Without a total loss. So you want to profit. You want to make money at the end of the day, right? It's that simple. You don't want to have, becomes an unacceptable loss. So 25 points, right? 25 points over becomes unacceptable loss. Right? It's no longer an acceptable loss. It's an unacceptable loss. Why? Because 25 points for 1% isn't of value. It isn't anything that I'm gaining when I can go ahead and redirect that 25 points, because now I put it into the physical. So I have 14 points allocated in the hardy. But what's that do? That reduces physical, poison, and disease damage. Poison's a dot, but physical is direct. Where can I put that 25 points that would be valuable to me and I would gain? Well, that would be an ironclad, because now I can reduce the what? Direct damage. Direct damage applies to magicka and physical, any kind of form, and that even includes physical. Oh my God, I've been telling people that for months. Allocate to your playstyle, not just put X number of points here and there. Yeah, right, exactly, Papa. Because you have a thing which your playstyle is going to be a reflection of your CP system, right? And when you allocate more points than what most people would recommend, that's why I never recommend. I go ahead and I tell people this is how I build, because this is how the build is designed. Its playstyle is designed to do this. That's what the dev said, by diversifying, right, and making your build more interesting within the CP system, because it does. You have to pick up your needs, but at the same time, you have to understand, where am I going to do more of my damage? How is my damage becoming more effective? We know dot damage is durated, right? So we know it's going to take 8 seconds for my Delimitate to resolve, right? But I'm going to get what? How many funnel health during that time? 3 or 4? If I get 3 or 4 funnel health during the 8 seconds, would I not allocate more into Master at Arms? That becomes the point, because I want to go ahead and increase my dot damage through Thaumaturge, but at the same time, I don't want to lose damage between the time durations. So what do I need to do? I need to offset the value. So it's something we need to do, because we already know I'm going to be light attacking more and doing direct damage between my dot damage. It's great. We're going to go ahead and scale up dot damage. But at what point are we having what? An acceptable loss versus an unacceptable loss? Because that goes throughout rotation. So, anyways, we're going to go ahead and we're going to put that nice 25 points into our ironclad, right? Now, by putting the 25 points in here, now I almost have 11%. I can go ahead and put one more, and then boom, I get 11% to the value of what? 1% into physical resistance. That into hardy. So 1%, only a 1% value increase in one tree will get me 11% in another. The Thaumaturge affect dots and AoE damage. It depends. Their AoE damage, like wall, has dot application, so thaumaturge will scale with that. But there are certain effects that aren't necessary, certain derated AoE effects that aren't dot effects. One of those is sap essence. Okay, so let me confirm that and let's get into this. Okay. When we take a look at AoEs, a lot of people think that thaumaturge is going to be great for all AoEs. Not all AoEs have dots, right? Very, very, very important. Because one of these ones that we're taking a look at is the morph to drain, is our sap essence. Sap essence is an AoE, but it's a direct damage, right? It isn't, there is no after effect in damage, right? There's none. Zero. Zip. So the duration that we're seeing in the description is the duration for what? Our major sorcery buff. It's not applied to the damage modifier. Okay? So once again, this is how the Nightblades have their burst heal. That's why they do really well in mob situations when healing. Nightblade healers do. Because they'll out-heal a Templar in those scenarios. Why? Because they have more targets to pull from. Because it's direct and it scales their healing based off of that. So this is not going to benefit from thaumaturge. It's not, but Wall of Elements will. So when we go ahead and we go into Destruction Staff and we go into our wall, and I usually like unstable. Most people like Blockade because they like that size and the duration, but that's fine. But me, I prefer this because I get a secondary effect of what? I get a direct damage effect after the effect ends. That's why I really like it. That's my play style. Would this work for any Magicka character? Well, that's what I'm saying, Carl. Ideally speaking, what we're looking at is each of your Magicka builds are going to differ, right? Because you have to acceptable loss, depending on your primary skills, your spammable skills, and so on. Like my primary, for example, my primary spammable skill as a Nightblade is funnel health, right? But for the Mage Blade, it's their jabs, right? Their spears. That also scales thaumaturge. So the effect is different between the Nightblade and the Templar. Pun intended, it's literally night and day between the two classes because of the way its primary spammable is applied. So no, that's exactly the point of this video. You can't take one set of tree and literally apply to all Magicka tunes and expect the same results. The devs were a little kind of smart when it came to that. The devs were like, we already know the diversity or the difference between all the classes and how is that going to benefit you in your play style and in your rotation, and your build is going to, you know, offset your CP system. Because if it was that easy, we would all just say, hey, by the way, guys, this is the template for Magicka builds. This is the template. This is the CP template for stamina builds, and the rule applies. It's a consistent value. It's consistent. It's a no-brainer, and people would do that. And they would say, oh, great, excellent. You know, I don't have to do any math. I don't have to figure out anything on my own. And there's, you know, there's room to play with it, right? You don't have to be so anal that it has to be 100%. You just have to understand what you're allocating. Is it an acceptable loss? Because every percentage value that increases, you're spending more CP points to get desired effect. So if it becomes unacceptable, then we want to reallocate those points somewhere else where it can be more beneficial for us. And that's why I really like going over this, because a lot of people want to say, oh, well, it has a diminishing value. Of course it has a diminishing value. It's percentage value. Percentage math always is going to apply to the law of diminishing returns. You cannot ignore it. You cannot avoid it. Unfortunately, it's just there, and it always will be. Morning, Lewis, and morning, Joe. And morning, Todd. Oh, that's exactly what I wanted to know. Oh, definitely. No problem, man. So that's why I like demonstrated here. We have a ceiling cap of 15%, but by 1%, we have to put 25 points. Oh, no problem. We have to put 25 points for 1%. That's ludicrous. It doesn't make sense, because now I could take that 25 points and put it in Ironclad, and I gain 11 to 1? That is crazy. Mystic laying down the math. Well, you know, I'm keeping it simplistic, but yeah. You know, definitely. So we have an 11-to-1, right? With a higher ceiling cap. So let's take example, right? We have, I want to say, a 25% ceiling cap here, right? Look at that. So we have a 25% ceiling cap versus a 15. Our diminishing value is lower than our 15. Why? Because we have a 10% increase, right? That 10% deducts the diminishing value for each point percentage applied. So I can go ahead and break it down into, like, you know, and get like everything and break it down point by point diminishing value loss at point dink, and I can do that, but it's kind of redundant, right? You don't have to be that anal about it. You just have to know, okay, my ceiling cap's at 25%, right? That's a 10% increase. That allows me to put more points and reap more benefits from a higher ceiling cap. It's just that simple. Just keep it simple. Don't have to overthink it or anything. So, you know, at the 11%, and that's where we were, we're at the 11.35, I can still allocate more points into my physical resistance. So I could take this up to about 16% and still be way under 50. Lay it down, brother. Thank you. Thank you, Helly. You know, it's funny to me, though, guys, because a lot of people wanted to go out there and they want to, like, I've been trolled forever. And it was kind of funny because I've been playing MMOs for, you know, 21 years, but I used to literally work with this type of math on a daily basis. So for me, it was like, really? Are you guys calling me like I don't know what I'm talking about when all of you used to stack CP? Hello, who are you talking to? Like, really? You know, but, you know, now everybody's kind of paying attention to it. But no one's going to go ahead and take this knowledge from me. I've just acquired it throughout my years. It's just from working directly with the numbers. You know, you can't, it's just something I was really good at, and I really liked it at one time. I loved it in my life. I worked at a bank, and I worked in annuities and financial products and mutual funds and all of that. And for me, this was something I really liked. This was the type of math that I really enjoyed. And it applies. It's an applied effect, what we see here, because it's percentage value. And when we take a look at interest, interest still applies in the same fashion. So, you know, to each their own, whatever, you know. But if you, once you know this math, it's just, I don't have to calculate it so harsh, because I know I have an acceptable loss. I already know, okay, I'm getting a 1% at this much points allocated because of my ceiling cap. But is it acceptable? That becomes the question. That becomes the question. Is it acceptable or unacceptable? And how can I make up the indifferent value based on parameters such or other variables such as gear and race? That becomes questionable. That's why I'm always telling everybody there's no BIS in this game, because the mathematical principles will never allow it to apply to all classes. And that's the law of math. You cannot ignore it. You cannot say, oh my God, this is BIS. No, it's not. Because math would contradict your ass. It would do it. And one of the major reflections of this is our CP system and how the devs designed it. The devs designed it to be intentionally this way to what? Make up the what we're missing. We have to gain what we're missing in value. That's what the CP system does. If, for example, if I don't have penetrating values, excuse me, if I'm missing penetrating value, right, where would I put more points into to make up damage? Well, I would put it in spell erosion, right? I'd have to make up the missing value that I need to be more productive and optimized. So optimization isn't necessarily one said set of gear or one said race or one said class in one said specific role. It's a multitude of different variables that have to come together, including, and then your CP being applied to set effect to gain optimization. So that is how optimization is acquired in this game. So it's not as simple as like playing World of Warcraft where you have tier 3 and it's already spelled out for you. It's like, oh, well, here's tier 3 gear. It's BIS, because there is no value higher that's going to what? Bring up your character sheet's values or your values in your number, thus doing increase. Those are fixed variables, right? This is not a fixed variable. So CP, we don't have fixed variables. Now gear is fixed. So our gear and our raise are fixed variables. We can't change those, right? But we can go ahead and choose what type of gear we put on. That's not fixed. And we can adjust the CP system, which is not fixed. So we have those adjusted variables that we can play with. So it's kind of interesting, you know, when people want to take a look at, okay, how do I do this? How do I apply my CP points? Well, once again, what's your play style? What's your gear? Okay, so if I have a critical set, let's say I don't have a critical set. Let's say I'm in PvP and I have very little critical damage, right? My crit percentage is like 20-something% hypothetically. Does Elfborn become appealing at that point? No. Why? Because we're not dealing crit. Mystic, good morning. I wanted to ask you a question. Can a Dark Elf DK pull good stamina DPS? You know, I mean, you got the passive in stamina, but given the fact that you have Magicka, that would benefit the DK. And the fire damage, you could still pull off combustion with the fire damage and get the increased proc to the combustion. So hypothetically speaking, we have a 6% increase to the stamina. But the Magicka, the resistance flame, becomes the question. How far does this derive? It's only a 3%, but it derives a value that we could be looking at with other races. And now we're looking at destructive mastery, increase the damage of said effects. I mean, dynamic is going to give you a nice boost, but you would be looking more at a hybrid build type situation. You wouldn't maximize with the Dark Elf as much as maybe like said Khajiit or Redguard or even Bosner for sustain. You know, when you take a look at that value, hell, you'd even get more benefit as a Nord at that point because of the other two passives. So, in my opinion, I'm using a Dark Elf as a Mag DK. I use a Dark Elf as Mag to DK. So, I mean, you'd have decent damage, and you could play majority of the content. That's not an issue. But when you're taking a look at the other values, reductions and all that, yeah, it would slightly hinder you a little bit. But nothing to say, oh, you can't do it. You can. My Dark Elf is my DK healer. Yep. So yeah, you can do it, but you can get the combustion proc. That's what's nice, Snoop. So if you were going to run Dark Elf DK, for example, I would use a fire glyph on your bow, for example. Why? Because you're getting that passive, right? You're going to get increase. You're going to get the passive increase, right? And keep in mind any other effects that you use for utility that has fire damage is going to be related in your from your scaling system in your resist flame with your max magicka. So you won't deal as much, but you'll be very versatile. Dark Elf healer, wow, yeah, I love Dark Elf healers. They're pretty badass. A lot of people like, you know, always want to go with Argonian or Brenton. I have Argonian, I have Brenton, but I also have Dark Elves. I love Dark Elves because of the max magicka, depending on each class. I don't use Dark Elf necessarily like for like all my classes. There's a couple of ones like Sork. I won't use it on Sork. I'd rather take, you know, High Elf, Sork healer, you know, because, or Breton. Breton would be a good one too for Sork. Argonian would work too, but you know, so it all differs. You can, there are multiple ways of doing it. But Dark Elf Stam DK, it's doable because of dynamic. But the question of it is, you're going to lose a little bit. You'll have to offset those differences to gain up. But combustion passive for the DK would apply for Dark Elf. So you get a boost to that, adding that in combustion. Scott, as long as I get 12k DPS, I will be happy. I love you, Scott. I love you. You haven't been here for a minute. Welcome to the show. Thank you for stopping in. Let's be real, Mystic. Nord can pull good anything. They are Nords. Nord Nation, Nord Nation, Nord. But yeah, so once again, man, when we take a look, we have to keep in mind values needed and what we need, right, based on parameter, and what we have to acquire. Now, going back into this, and we take a look at my resistance, guess what? My physical resistance is shit compared to my spell resistance. I can offset that, right, in the CP system. That's what's really nice. So guess what? I'm wearing light armor. Now I can increase physical resistance, right, getting that value up to an equal value as much as possible. So I'm going to put 24 points in. Now I'm going to go back in and voila! Now I have more physical resistance than spell resistance. Now I want to go ahead and I will say, oh, well, you know, now I'm 300 under my spell resistance. Not a problem. That's why we have champion points. So now I come over and I go into the spell shield and I get the extra 300 there. And then I switch out and I back up and I come over here and look what we have. I'm like, oh, wait a minute. I'm still 100 under. What the hell, Mystic? You're still 100. You don't have to be anal about it. Like, seriously, you know. Let's put 5. Now we back up. And there we have it. So, see, we can adjust values, man. Argonian for the win! Yeah, Orin loves our Argonians. He loves his Argonians. But there you have it, guys. It's kind of where we have to... everything here in your attributes, in your character sheet, is a reflection of your race, your gear, and guess what? Your CP points. So first thing you're always going to have to take a look at before allocating your CP points is take a look at this. Then take a look at, like Papa said, your play style, right? What you're doing in your rotation, how you're going to optimize that, and how you're going to apply that play style and that build to your CP system, right? Because like I said, let's say if I didn't have crit. If I don't have crit and I'm PvPing, I don't want any points in the Elfborn. It becomes junk to me. It's wasted. It's an unacceptable loss, right? I can redivert that elsewhere and capitalize even further. So let's say I'm running more of a dot build. Back in my day, old days, dots didn't crit at one time. Now in this game they do. So things have changed. They've developed. They've progressed. But let's say I want more into my dots and I'm like, I want to go more burst too. So I want to go ahead and take an acceptable loss over here. So I'm going to take 21%. Now it gives me 6%. Now I can get another 13 out of this. I can even drop this down. And I can get even higher. You see what I'm saying? So we have to understand, like, not every build is going to determine how your CP is allocated. And whether or not, guess what? It's acceptable or unacceptable. Because now, because we're not running any crit, hypothetically, we're bumping into what? An acceptable loss. I watch a Blob vid, and he said you have to go one step above a CP to get a flat... No. Okay, Bob's wrong. Blob's wrong. He's wrong. I've shown that. Let's show this. Okay. He's wrong. It's rounded to the whole. So if you get a whole value, it's whole. Poor Blob. Poor guys. Poor guys. They pretend to be so good. Okay. Okay, so I'm at 7. I'm at, right, Arcana is 14%. Okay, now look at my magic recovery. 1467. Right, Scott? 1467. Now, if he's right, if I put one more point in there and go over the over the value, it should go higher than 1467, right? That's what we're to believe, and this is why they're all stupid, and I have no problem telling them that. So we're going to put the jump value to 1407. And look, it didn't increase. I think they're good gamers. I think they're good gamers. They're just mathematically challenged. They don't know their math. They're pretenders. They're good. They're skilled. They're very skilled. They just don't know their math. Because those jump values, whatever. Now, I've made mistakes. We all have. We all do. I have. But it's not true. And once you get up to an equal value, let's say 12% is flat. 12% is law. It's the whole value. Going over 1207, guess what? Not true whatsoever. I'd lose. Poor blob. Yeah. Tell Mystic says hi, Scott. Say Mystic corrected you. Say hi. Yet the thousands of people will subscribe to these guys. It's okay. I don't hate them. I just see mass stupidity everywhere. I can't help a lot of people, man. I can't. I can only help the people who want to be helped, and thank you guys, because I don't look at helping you guys because you guys are my community. We discuss shit. Actually, my community helps me. So it's like awesome. Like that's why I do streams, because I'm like, wow, I didn't even take that into consideration. Thanks, man. Cool. You know, that's why I love my community. But the poor other content creators who, oh my gosh. You can't fuck with me with this type of math. You can't. A lot of the times. I have fucked up. But a lot of times you can't fuck with me on this type of math. You just can't. A lot of people are like, your build sucks. And I'm like, no, actually, I like my build. I'm pretty good with my build. You can run the 5.3 config and you can do all that. That's fine. That's fine. I'm not doing it. You can. I won't. I won't. Because I know. I know. Did he mean the rounded effect? Because, yeah, he meant the rounded effect. So he like, okay. So, like Scott was saying, you have to put 1 over the equal value, Robert, is what like a lot of people think. And I've heard this. Like people like, you have to have it at like 1407. 14 won't give you that value unless you go 1 point over. That's wrong. That's completely fucking wrong. That's completely stupid. Thanks for doing this, Mystic. It was very helpful. Gave me a few ideas for adjusting my points. Oh, definitely, man. Laugh out loud. I like this new claim approach, Mystic. Normally, you would have destroyed Blob's life. Right, I know. I'm trying. I think he's great. Like he's a really good player, and he's skilled. They just don't. They're mathematically challenged. Okay, they are. They don't know math. I've seen all of them fuck up. Everyone, there's only been 2 players, 2 of us that covered diminishing return. Me and Zai. That's it. The rest of them, when it comes to math, I don't respect them. I think they're skilled. I think they're young. They're just young. They're young. But no, I don't respect them mathematically. I won't. I never will. They stack CP. They ignored the law of diminishing return for a year or 2. So no, I have no respect for them in that aspect. I respect them as gamers and as content creators. Mathematically, I don't respect them. 0. But a lot of people could say the thing. If you put Einstein or somebody beside me, he'd be like, you're dumb as fuck. And I'm like, yes, I am. And I would be shaking my head, yes, I am. Because you draw out, like, you know, an equation, like a huge-ass equation, like for... the law of relativity. You know, we put in like a small form, but mass stupidity in the world turns, right? In this way, stupid likes to follow stupid. I'm not saying Blob's stupid. I'm just like, ignorance likes to follow ignorance. You know, if people think that's cool and that's the way to do it, then more people will more likely follow the mass, right? That's our society as a whole. It's just the way it is. Even if they're wrong, they could be, what are those little things that jump off cliffs back in the day or whatever, lemurs or whatever. And they would just run they follow one and they'll lead the mass to their death. That's exactly what he said. If you have 13%, the system still sees it as 12. No, yeah, and he's wrong. Because this is why he's wrong. He's wrong. So let's say, let's go back in here. Now, hold on. I'm going to take this 1 point out. Okay. He's wrong. Poor Blob's wrong. 1467, right? We have an equal value, right? So we're at 14.67. I'm going to drop, guess what? By 1392. Go back out. Ta-da! God, we lost 10 points. Look, we lost 10 points. We went from 14.67 to 14.57, right? Right. Okay, and then we go back in, and we had one more point. Now look at it again. Now guess what? We're back up to 14.67. Oh, but wait a minute. Let's go back in here again. We'll go one more over for Blob. Please link him this video. We'll go one more over for Blob. Go back out. And look, nothing changes. They're idiots. I'm sorry. They're skilled, but they're morons. A hole is a hole. You can't change the value of a hole. Not even the computer's that dumb. So, lemmings. Yes, it is lemmings. I'm surrounded by lemmings majority of the time is what I am. Not you guys, but the other lemmings. Like, you know, they're just following the one lemming and into the ocean they go. I was in a group recently, and one of the player characters was named, well, Hung Nord. Oh my God. Mystic, what do tank builds have to take into consideration with their CP when running Vampire? Well, it's also going to matter on race, Lewis. So if you were a, like, say, Dark Elf tank, you would need less flame resistance than any of the other races. Oh, welcome back, Sylvia. So, you know, Deltia said he could beat you 1v1 with a 2.5-pound weight in his left hand. Just joking. Me and Deltia has been getting along really good. When I first came into this game, everything was generalized, right, guys? And this is, I like, literally, I'm being humble right now. I was so pleased. Back in the day, I was a little dick. I'll be honest. I was a little asshole. Right? I was an elitist. I got to alpha test for multiple companies. I got to do I get private invites. You're like, yeah, I'm the man. I'm the man. Why do they request me? Because they know who Mystic is. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And I would be like that, right? Because that's who I was. So, you know, that's what I did. And I'm like, you know, they can't fuck with me with the math, diminishing return. Oh, yeah, because I worked in banking. Oh, yeah. Or like, I work in banking. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And I was like, yeah, I was like that. So all of a sudden, though, I would get all the perks of being an elite gamer. As far as like content and getting to try things first and whatever. It was like, cool, excellent, awesome. Yeah, Mystic, we want you in on this. Cool. And then all of a sudden I realized, oh shit, right? You know, I'm a dick. I'm a douchebag. So all of a sudden I was just like, oh, well, I got to change my ways, man. You know, fuck all this shit. So I started pulling back from MMOing. And then I come over to Elder Scrolls Online. I come in Elder Scrolls Online, and it was fucking completely generalized. Everybody was ignoring math, and everybody was following this stupidity. And I'm like, what the fuck happened to MMOers while I was gone? What happened to MMOers since the fucking beginning? Now, it wasn't just me, because when I looked at the forums, first thing I did was I went to the forums to read what the fuck were people getting this. Well, the forum posters, old school forum posters, were like literally saying the diminishing value. Haha, I felt like that when you joined the guild, Mystic. Oh yeah, Mystic joined. Yeah, definitely. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, dude, like the devs hated me, but they would never deny me back in the day. Like, you know, a company like SOE would be like, we're working on a new project. Do we want to send Mr. Grave an invite? And they'd be like, no, we don't, but we're going to. And they'd shoot me an invite, be like, hey, we got a new game. It's going to be coming out. Like, yeah, sweet. I get to bitch a lot. So fucking cool. It's going to be awesome. Let's do it. Well, have a good weekend. I have to work. Hopefully, I catch Mystic on Xbox this weekend. Definitely, Mustang. Thank you once again for everything. I was asking because the health recovery, you lose running vamp. Yeah, you can offset the loss a little bit, Lewis, but not enough to completely diminish the negative effect. So you can go health glyphs, actually, but then you lose the end on the value of recovery. So that's one of the things. You can actually offset vampire almost to a complete indifferent, where it's pointless to even be vampire, right? you can. The point of vampire is to get recovery, you know, stamina magica. But if I put the 2 health recoveries on there and then allocate to CP, then I get indifference, and then it's pointless to even be a fucking vampire. Maybe in PvP, but I don't think health recovery is as important in PvE. Right. Yeah, because you're getting healed. Yeah. That's why you take it. So it's kind of like, oh, okay, cool. Excelente. But yeah, so, except City of Heroes. City of Heroes, yeah, like when I joined City of Heroes, like I didn't get to test City of Heroes. I just joined. I was like, man, I'm going to try this game out. And like popped in, you know. And that system was all different, you know, the way everything went, you know, as far as skills and slotting and, you know, all these different effects, like your enhancements, everything. It was different type of math. It was a linear math when you went in one direction. But the problem of it is which direction were you going to go in and how are you going to get your modifiers to, you know, incrementally increase said effect. That was the whole thing with City of Heroes. So you had different options in which direction to go, but once you went in that direction, you were linear in perspective math. So, you know, but yeah, but when like I said, when I came here, everybody was ignoring mathematical laws. It was like, oh my God, we stack CP. Oh, we're going to take crit up to 70, 80%. I'm like, what the fuck? And who was doing it? Not the old school MMOers posting on the forums being like, don't do that. It was the fucking tubers and the thousands of people listening to the stupidity. And I'm like, oh my God, what the fuck? I'm like, I'm surrounded by morons. And then they're like, oh, Templars are the only healers and DKs are the only tanks. And I'm like, they're fucking morons still. They're fucking idiots. They're completely stupid. I can't help these morons. So is it even worth running Vamp on tanks anymore? Yeah, because the passive, the undeath. That's why people take it, Lewis. Out of anything else, the tanks take it because of that passive. That's why tanks run it. Because that passive is very powerful on a tank. Like, insanely awesome on a tank. For no other reason. For no other reason would you really want it on a tank other than your undeath passive. That's pretty much what seals the deal for tanks wanting to take vampirism. Like, I have a tank that has a werewolf. Why? Because I want that extra stam regen on my main bar. That's why I take it. I didn't take it because whatever I needed, the 15%. I was like, fuck yeah, I'm taking that bitch. I'm slotting it. I'll never proc it, but I'll slot that bitch. You need vampire for undeath passive. Recovery is not the #1 reason to be a vampire tank, right? It's literally the undeath. That's why tanks take it. And it's nice. It's nice as a vampire tank. You know? So it is. But yeah, man. But once again, there are acceptable losses in the into the system. Right? You have to pay attention to that. You can't ignore it. You can't. You just can't. Yeah, if you try to ignore mathematical law, it will fuck you in the end. You can't do it. And I'm generalizing everything. Keep that in mind. I'm generalizing math, which I should be spanked for and scolded for, because if one of my teachers came and saw me generalizing, my business teacher saw me generalizing this type of math, I would get totally flogged, right? Because we just had to know percentage of the value of diminishing value over said period of time or percentage. I'm not trying to get into all that, man. Really, I'm not. I'm just keeping it general to help people say, hey, look, we have acceptable losses. That's a term that comes from business. And diminishing returns is another law that usually applies in business. But the law of diminishing value applies to any percentage math. Undeath is OP. Hell yeah, it is. I love undeath. It's not OP. It's balanced. No, devs. We didn't say it was OP. Undeath is completely fucking balanced. Do not fuck with it at all. At all. Don't do it. But anyways, yeah, guys. So, pretty much in a nutshell, I hope this video helps people. I really do. You know, just because you can have a little fun with it, right? You don't have to be so anal. Now, remember, guys, unlike what most people say, if it's a flat value of a whole, right? The jump point you would not exceed over because it's 1 point you're wasting. Right? Jump points are applied to holes and once again, percentage carried over. So if it doesn't round to the hole and it carries over, that's a jump point. So, bow, to the hole. Bow. All right, and I did fuck up on like my percent. I was keeping it at 45 because I knew CP allegation. I was like, fuck it. But you know, somebody had help. Someone's like, Mystic, you really got to like put CP points where people are going to benefit from it. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. Actually, you are right. Like, I should really be doing that. And a couple of my viewers helped me with that. A couple of you guys helped me with that. So, once again, I learned from you guys, too. Undeath is great in PvP, so they realize they can smack you with the Dawnbreaker. No, that's the only thing I never want to get hit with in PvP is Dawnbreaker. I never want to, but yet, everybody sees me, and they all know it. They're already like, Mystic's a fucking vampire. Hit him with the fucking Dawnbreaker. Crack! And I'm like, oh, ow. And it's unavoidable now. I can't even avoid the Dawnbreaker. I'm either roll out of its fucking its shit, or I'm getting hit. That makes such a big deal about fire damage. It's a joke. I run a COA2 as a level 4 on my tank, and it's like extra 1k damage. Yeah, it's true. But anyways, guys, I really hope this all helps out. You know. And I hope I didn't hurt any content creators' feelings. I'm hoping I didn't. I really do think they're talented players. They just don't always know what the fuck they're talking about. But whatever. We all are human. We all can make mistakes. Anyways, I'm Mr. Graven, this CSO Daily. If anybody has any questions or comments, please post below. Thank you for watching today. And once again and always, have a nice day.